Hi, I'm Attorney General Bill Sorrell. I'm at Fiddlehead Four Corners in Bennington.
Now, you've been the Attorney General for how long?
A little over 15 years now. I'm the longest serving Attorney General in Vermont history.
What are some of your accomplishments in 15 years?
Well, one accomplishment was I sued the tobacco industry very aggressive, just 4 weeks to the day after coming into office, very aggressively litigated it, got a bill through the legislature that got nationwide recognition for the litigation. We ultimately settled. Vermont's received over $300 million already from that settlement, but as long as Americans keep smoking, Vermont will receive at least $25 million a year, every year, forever from that settlement.
What would you say, Bennington has some of the same problems as other towns in the state, crime-wise, quality of life. What have you heard, what do you know about Bennington's two or three major issues now, and from that, how can you help
I think
fix those?
Drugs, not just traditional street drugs, heroin and cocaine, but prescription drugs are a big source of abuse now in the state. A lot of people are addicted. About half of our overdose deaths are from prescription drugs. And just more recently, what we're seeing is these synthetic drugs, bath salts. We had our first overdose death earlier this summer. We're seeing a lot of admissions to emergency rooms, people in sort of psychotic type episodes from this. So the bath salts and the other synthetics are a really big trouble and are a problem. And Bennington seeing these issues and then seeing the crime that frequently goes along with addiction, burglaries, car break-ins, and such. So we're seeing in different parts of the state right now evidence of organized gang activity out of now New York City, gangs from competing boroughs, essentially in a bit of a drug war up here in Vermont. We're seeing more drug signs in our correctional facilities, more inmate-on-inmate assaults than we've had historically, and it really, the situation cries out for a combination of efforts. One, state, local, and federal law enforcement's got to work more closely together to identify those responsible for bringing the drugs in and for pushing them on the streets. We need to do more for those who are addicts, who aren't getting services. Just in Chittenden County, there are 500 addicts receiving either methadone services or buprenorphine services. I was at the methadone clinic a couple of weeks ago, watched it in operation, met with a number of addicts who talked to me about their lives and their experiences with the clinic. But so 500 in Chittenden County or Burlington, most all from Chittenden County. But the bad news is that there's a waiting list of 500 more. So
would that mean maybe more centers are going to open?
They're trying to open a larger center in south of Burlington. The question is zoning issues, but it just reinforces the fact that we have an awful lot of people who are addicts, who are not in jail, who want to live productive lives, and the state has to find a way to get them services so that they're not committing burglaries and car break-ins and such. And then the other side of the equation, of course, is that we really just have to do more education, prevention on the front end, and start at an earlier age, just like the tobacco fights, so that people don't experiment with these highly addictive drugs, become addicted, and then have to fight the addiction.
Your Democratic primary opponent is T.J. Donovan. He has a platform for nonviolent drug offenders. It's very much like what Governor Chris Christie is doing in Jersey.
Sure.
Don't send them to prison. Send them to programs, and it saves the state a lot of money. Is that the same thing? Do you agree with his ideas, or do you have your own ideas?
No, I do agree with those ideas. I mean, the reality is our prison beds are full right now of people that arguably should be there. They're sentenced there by a judge for various serious crimes. And What my opponent's talking about is those who are non-serious offenders, and you weed them out. They're not really qualified for the diversion program, which is actually under the Attorney General, but it's a first cousin of that. And these are people who, if they're convicted in court, are not likely to be sent to prison. So yes, we've got to come up with mechanisms that give them a choice to address their addiction issues and their antisocial behavior, and hopefully get on the straight and narrow. It only fundamentally makes sense. I'm not the guy who goes that we've got to be sending way more people to jail than we're sending right now. And I've been the Chittenden County State's Attorney 2 different times. The job that my opponent holds now, I've held that job 2 different times, sandwiched around 10 or 11 years in private practice of law. I was Governor Howard Dean's Secretary of Administration, sort of running the state budget, tax policy for 5 years. I know the demands on state government, and that we can't build more jails, throw more people in jail and get out of this problem. We've got to have some other creative mechanisms.
Right. So 3 more points to hit really quickly. Campaign financing. Everyone talks about it, throwing big money around. You said there's nothing you can really do about it now.
Well,
and you said you wouldn't really fight it, but it seems like it gives you a little bit of an advantage too, because... No,
I didn't say I wouldn't fight it. What I said is no state has tried to do more to reduce the influence of large moneyed interests in our campaigns than Vermont. Our legislature passed a statute that significantly reduced contributions to candidates, but even more in terms of pushing the envelope, limited expenditures by candidates. They did so after we advised them that there was risk that we would be sued. Sure enough, we were sued. We defended the law. We won at the trial court level. We won at the intermediate federal appeals court level in New York City. But unfortunately, we ran into the same U.S. Supreme Court that has since handed down the Citizens United case and turned 200 years of legal history in this state on its ear and gave corporations the rights of individuals. And
has that helped you at all?
Helped me how?
Well, just big Democrat donors just throwing buckets of money into TV commercials for you or radio spots.
So what we did was the first super PAC in Vermont was registered about six weeks ago or so, and Judge Sessions, our federal court judge, had ruled recently in our favor in the case, but suggested that so-called super PACs that only do independent expenditures, they don't work in coordination with campaigns, that under federal law as it's developing through cases, that these super PACs couldn't be limited in terms of the contributions that they accept. And not being one to just defend a lawsuit that's likely to be a loser, I said that we would not, for this legislative cycle, enforce the Vermont law that treats those PACs, those independent expenditure PACs, the same as others. And then come January, I will suggest to the legislature that it draw a distinction between the 2 types. My opponent agrees with the wisdom of that position, because I guess
no one in Vermont wants these big PACs influencing policy in Vermont.
I understand, but they have the legal right now to do so, and there is a PAC that has been supportive of my candidacy, and these are the attorneys, the Democratic Attorneys General of the United States,
right.
Like Martha Copley from Massachusetts and Kamala Harris from California, Eric Schneiderman from New York, Beau Biden's from Delaware, and they're very supportive of my candidacy. They know I've been a leader on environmental issues and consumer protection issues and campaign finance issues, on civil rights issues, on national health care. They want me to stay in office, and they've got every right to put out ads that are truthful, not negative against my opponent. They're truthful about my record, and I'm pleased to have that support so that Vermont voters can know what my record is before they make a decision on whom they're going to support in the primary on August 28th.
There was a story in Vermont Digger's website a few days ago kind of talking about how you as the AG, you've sort of taken a beating in these 3 major cases that you fought, the campaign finances, the pharmaceutical marketing, the Vermont Yankee thing.
And the trial level.
It's like, well, why would you, if Vermont has a better litigator, why would you try to argue it at the Supreme Court and get hammered? And I mean, on one hand, they say, why is Bill Sorrell doing it? But they also interviewed other people saying, you know what, it's a conservative Supreme Court.
Yeah,
you had no chance anyway.
AGs typically argue for their states, 5, 6, 7 AGs a term, and
Right.
when the case gets to the U.S. Supreme Court, more often than not, the Attorney General argues the case. I took this very seriously, prepared for months for it. And
do you think you were belittled at all by the Supreme? I heard the audio clip where the coffee and donuts thing. It's almost as if they were making a joke about, well, if we bought 3 donuts and a cup of coffee and a coffee.
Well, they just wanted to. One of the reasons that the Supreme Court has said that they like to have AGs argue is because they're on the ground and they know how statutes affect their own state. So that was a question. I was actually happy to hear that question because I think the justice who was asking the question didn't expect the answer, that there was a limitation on how much you could make in terms of a contribution for putting up a house party. But let's put it this way: if I had spent $600,000 or $1 million on a private law firm to argue the case, there would not have been a different outcome. You can take that to the bank.
So lastly, what are your thoughts on arts? Arts in Vermont? Just the arts scene, artists, artisans.
I'm a big proponent of the arts. I always go to Art Hop in Burlington. It's coming up just the Saturday after Labor Day, the first Friday art walks, it's just a hugely important part of the culture. It's the creative mind, the creative energy just enhances community life.
Have you heard the story out of Russia with Pussy Riot?
Yeah, I have.
What are your thoughts on that? If that happened in Vermont, a girl band called Pussy Riot came and just partied in the church, the most sanctified church in Vermont. Didn't really ruin it or go pee in it or anything like that, but just did what they did here.
Yeah.
Would you come down hard on them? Would you slap them on the wrist? What would you do?
It's an exercise of First Amendment rights. One question would be, where I have come down hard was abortion protesters when I was the state's attorney, and they chained themselves in the Women's Health Center and denied women access to reproductive services. And I did come down hard on that.
Is that the same as, a girl band, though?
No, and I don't. That's what I'm trying to draw a distinction, is the fact that, a song in a church would get a slap on the wrist, if that, in Vermont, unless it was something every week and the folks in the church were objecting and whatever. Right. But if it was an isolated incident like that, it would be nowhere near the criminal proceedings that we've seen in Russia, let alone a 2-year sentence on the other end, which is an outrage. And I think that it's going to be interesting to watch as to whether the popular movement in Russia against Putin, because of this prosecution, just sort of galvanizes and energizes opposition movements, and I certainly hope that does happen. So
people should vote for, in one sentence, they should vote for Bill Sorrell over T.J. Donovan on the 28th, I believe?
28th.
On the 28th for Attorney General of Vermont.
Because I have 15 plus years of experience of being a very aggressive defender of the environment, very aggressive enforcer of our consumer protection laws. I brought hundreds of millions of dollars into the state. I've stood up for civil rights with the federal government against the Arizona immigration law, with the federal government in favor of national health care legislation, against the corporations that were trying to make corporate contributions in Montana state court, so with Montana before the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm one of the AGs who has signed a letter to Congress saying that if we need to change the Constitution to override the Citizens United case, we should do it. If you like what you've been getting from the Attorney General, an aggressive enforcer of our laws, and somebody who's responsible for a cleaner environment in Vermont and Vermonters being healthier and safer, and you like my energy, enthusiasm, my ideas for going forward, then please vote for me on August 28th.
Pro-fracking or anti-fracking?
Anti-fracking.
And what about the pipeline that would run from Canada through Colorado down to wherever? And
I don't see the need for it.
Thank you very much.